Jalil, the U.S. men's national team has their own sort of March Madness, and
Mhm.
the fallout from not winning Nations League is real. And it
Yep.
certainly is a conversation that everyone is having inside their small inner circles, their bigger circles, across social media. It really is, as we now approach 400 days to the World Cup opener in 2026 for the U.S. men's national team. These things seem to be much more volatile in the response from different people. I'm curious, as the dust settles on a less than exciting window for the U.S. men's national team, to say the least. What are your thoughts about where everything hangs as we move forward to the last part of this season for the Europeans and we get into the meat of the season for the MLS players?
What I find interesting, about this window and anytime the US men's national team struggles in any way is that, a lot of people come out and they're like, "Oh my god, this is completely unacceptable. These are embarrassing performances," or whatever have you. But I have said over and over that anytime you're talking about games as if they're a foregone conclusion before the game happens, you're not in a
Mhm.
good mental space. Whether it's the players, whether it's people who
Mm.
talk about the game for a living or whatever have you, like us or whatever, it don't matter. But ahead of the Panama game in the semifinal, I saw too many people, too many outlets, too many
Yes.
pundits talking
Yes.
about the final. What is your ideal, you know,
Mhm.
matchup that you'd wanna see in the final or whatever. I kept saying, "Wait, hold on a second. It's
Mhm.
not a foregone conclusion that the US is gonna beat Panama." That's
That's
the
right.
first thing for me. And then the second thing for me is that when you are embarking upon a journey to prepare for the World Cup, what would be ideal in everyone's mind is that the national team wins every single game leading up to the World Cup and then wins every game in the World Cup to win the World Cup.
Right.
But football is exactly synonymous with life. That ain't
Mhm.
how life works. In order for you to figure out how to get the next job, you have to have a terrible job interview, and then you
That's
go
right.
back and you sit down with your mentor or look in the mirror and you're like, "Alright, that job interview did not go well for X, Y, and Z reasons." You fix it for the next time, and then you get better. So that for me is the frame of mind that I try to make sure I gravitate toward when I'm looking at the US men's
Mm.
national team
Okay.
more than an extremely cynical one or one that's blinded by fandom. So for me, I'm now looking at what does the national team do? What does Pochettino and
Mhm.
company do
Mhm.
to address things that did not go well against Panama to make sure that they're growing? You cannot grow unless you fail.
Mm. Mm. Jalil, that's a bar, to say the least. And I go back to this whole idea of, are we asking the right questions to create the right platform to derive the answers we need, the solutions that we need? I mentioned way back when, season one, back the end of last summer, early fall, that no foreign managers ever won a World Cup. Period. Full stop.
Yeah, when you first said that threw me for a loop.
That's what you have to reverse engineer things to figure out the pathway to get there. So for
Yeah.
me, when people talk about winning the World Cup, I'm embarrassed, to be honest. It makes me feel like we haven't emerged with a deeper sense of self and body of knowledge that it takes to be elite in this game. And there are several reasons why that a foreign manager's never won a World Cup. National identity and cohesion, right? There's always a
Mhm.
sense that a national manager understands the footballing culture, cultural understanding. Same country, you understand the players' cultural backgrounds, the languages, the social dynamics, familiarity with the player pool and our development process, historical precedent and tradition. I mean, national footballing infrastructure. I could go on. I
Mhm.
won't. But there are more than a handful of variables that other federations hold as key principles for success. And this is not about Pochettino. This is about our own identity as a soccer country. We've been doing this for too long now to not start getting our own confidence in our footballing managers, our coaches, how we're developing them. We don't have to be insecure. We need to just be ourselves, bet on ourselves. Because I don't want necessarily for us to lose what made us so special in 94, in '02, in 2014 to gain what we need to be a proper footballing nation at the highest level, to be in a quarterfinal, to be in a semifinal, to be in a final. Those are all the things
And
we
for you
need.
and for you, what are those things that made us special in '94, '02, and beyond?
Mm. It's interesting because we used to concede back in the day, and I'm saying back in the day, Bora Milutinovic and the '90s, more my vintage and graying hairs in my beard, is why do we have to lose the greatness of America? And I'm not trying to be jingoistic, but the attitude, the mentality, the fight, the commitment, these are things that we're now questioning with these players in this pool, right? We are. Oh, they didn't
Mhm.
want it. Like we've been talking about this for a couple of years now, and dare I say a cycle plus, where we're questioning
Yeah.
the mentality of what it was like. I remember covering World Cups when you'd go to an opposing team press manager and they'd be like, "Hey, like we know we're better, but these guys are going to make us work." The American spirit, like when I hear Pochettino talk about he wants the American team to be more Argentinian because of the things that I just described, I don't necessarily agree with that. Full stop, period. We have what it takes in this country in terms of a mindset and mentality because of who we are. We don't have to lose that to gain the elegance, the intelligence, the soccer IQ, the gravitas, the savvy that you need to win games at that level. And I just feel like we have somewhat lost the plot in searching for everything else. We forgot who we are sometimes as a footballing country, and the commitment, the work rate, the esprit de corps, all those things matter. It does matter. And I don't want to lose that for the evolution of our country when when it means that we don't get results anymore no matter what we do.
What's the most interesting to me, you preaching by the way, but what's the most interesting thing to me
Appreciate
is
that.
that as a footballing nation, and we're all victims and culprits at in one way, shape, or form, but as a footballing nation, nobody wants to
Mm,
fully address the fact that there is a very small demographic of our country that plays soccer at the highest level or
mhm,
has the
mhm.
ability or access to do so. So
That's
I
right.
don't understand how the US is
Mm,
supposed to compete with the rest of the world when it comes to football when the poorest kids in our country can't play the goddamn sport. I
mm,
don't that's what
mm.
that's what I don't understand.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
and when you talk about mentality, the people that are predisposed to have an advantageous sport mentality are those of the disenfranchised.
Mm.
People that grow up with having
Speak on it.
things are disadvantaged from a mentality standpoint to
Yes.
be the most elite athletes in the world.
That's right.
But we have a system that fosters those that have and blocks those that don't have. And then
Mhm.
when now when the national team loses or underachieves is the only time that people are real critical of, "Oh my
Mhm.
god, the state of the national team is not where it needs to be. We need to have more fighters. We need to have X, Y, and Z people." Okay, but people in the hood don't play soccer though. So how
Mm.
do you also now expect people to try to go get it out the mud against people
Yes.
that will
Oh,
die
brilliant.
and bleed and do anything to be successful for the national team?
I
And to
Yep.
me, I feel
Mhm.
that the players are they they are what they are. From
Mhm.
everything that I know from any of my boys that have played for the full national team, they're putting forth their level best. So I hate hearing about how, "Oh, people don't care
That's
when they
right.
play for the national team."
That's right.
I think that's bullshit
Yep. I agree with you.
because
I agree with you.
if you wanna tell me that it doesn't matter to players when they make the World Cup roster or they play for the national team, explain to me why Sean Johnson was weeping when Berhalter called him and told him that he made the World Cup roster.
That's right.
Explain that to me.
That's right.
But when you are
That's right.
talking about developing or cultivating talent that has innate mentality to fight for things, You have to get people that have to fight for every aspect of their life. Otherwise, when the stakes are at their highest, they're gonna revert back to what they know, and what we know is the environments that we grew up in.
You know, you literally took the words out of my mouth, and I was gonna pose it in a question. How many of our top players have come out of the mud? Like, we
That's
had
my
Eddie Johnson
point.
on, and I'm a byproduct of this. You and I have talked about this, the OGs, the Eddie Popes, the Kobe Jones, like, we Tony Sanders, so many of us have had this conversation about this shared experience in the bubble of suburban soccer. We went to where the game was oftentimes. How many players have come up out of the mud? It's a conversation you hear all the time, um, when we're in the midst of this generation 2.0 of NBA stars whose sons are becoming ballers. And one of the most consistent conversations that they have, and it might be Gilbert Arenas or Kenyon Martin or whomever it may be, they talk about where's the hunger? Where's the desire? Because they've been given so much. But you and I both know to whom much is given, much is expected. And I just feel like we have forgotten the importance of diversity in these executive and coaching leaderships is sometimes to approximate what you need to grow as a player and as a footballer in this case. And I think right now we have created a sterile system where so much of what we do is the same that it doesn't allow anyone who has a different mindset or they really are really trying to eat. That's why it's so refreshing to have a conversation with Omar Gonzalez as someone who was very cognizant of the sacrifices being made. But I can be honest with you, couldn't say that my kids felt the same way, and they grew up playing elite at the highest level on the boys and girls side, right? It's hard to feel the struggle when you're eating nice sushi. Real talk.
Right. Straight
So
up.
it's just again important not only for our show, but I think Jalil and I just always try to keep it 100 anytime we chop it up, whether it be in this platform or text messages or DMs. It doesn't matter because I still think we have a long way to go as a footballing country to ask the right questions with humility, without pride, and without personal gain. And once we get to that level, I really think we have a chance to break through right now, which appears to be a little bit of a plateau, and a little bit of a leveling off. But we'll see. I'm not going to play the results. It's March of 25. I'm not going to pretend that it's June of 26, and I know you won't either. But I think everyone has a right to feel a certain way about the results in Nation League, about the U.S. men's
Facts.
national team for sure.